Hello all. Just watched episode 3 of She-Hulk. Again, it was okay. Pretty flat, really. Not funny. A little bit that made me smile at the very end. And there's an attempted gotcha in there by the writers. It's actually kind of two concurrent stories, so I'll cover them both. The main story is about Emil Blonsky's parole hearing. Last episode ended with them finding out that he had escaped and had been fighting. This was something we saw in Shang-Chi. It starts off with Jen going to see Blonsky, demanding to know what happened, and he says that Wong forced him to leave prison, speak to Wong. She gets her assistant to try and find Wong, and for some reason Wong's on social media, which makes no sense, but hey. And there's a whole bit with the sexist dickhead from the previous 2 episodes, which we'll come back to because that's the secondary plot. Wong appears in the middle of that meeting. And Wong's an idiot in this. It's kind of standard, really. I have a feeling that every guest appearance and everybody's just going to be an idiot in this show. And he confirms that he broke Emil Blonsky out of jail because he needed to train to be the Sorcerer Supreme, so he fought him in a Kumite match. I mean, seriously? This is what they're going with. He agrees to testify so that they know that it's not Emil's fault. There's lots of kind of media stuff going on. Jen's struggling with all that. She's struggling with how she's being perceived. So we get to the parole hearing. I mean, this is how much happened in this episode. We get to the parole meeting. She presents her case and she gets Blonsky to say he's rehabilitated. She gets various witnesses out to say he's rehabilitated. But Wong hasn't turned up. Right at the last minute, Wong arrives, testifies that he forced Emil to leave and that he offered Emil freedom at Kamatage, but Emil wanted to come back to his cell to serve his term. Then the question is asked, can you control the monster inside you? Jen says yes, but Emil decides to show them, so he transforms into the Abomination. The room goes crazy, guards charged in, and Emil obviously is in control of the Abomination, reverts back to his Emil Blonsky form. And Jen argues that this is proof because he could have broken out any time he wanted to, but he still stayed. He served his sentence and she wins the case and he's given parole. It ends with Jen, I don't know if she's going back to her car or what, I'm not sure. She gets jumped from behind by a man wearing a construction helmet. She starts screaming, then kind of realises she's She-Hulk, so she transforms. And then she's accosted by 4 men, one with a crowbar, one with a wrecking ball, and another 2 men as well. And this is the Wrecking Crew, who are a classic supervillain group, and now they're just a race swap bunch of losers. They can stand toe to toe with Thor, but they're a bunch of losers. Unbelievable, it really is. They were trying to get her blood, but they couldn't because she transformed into She-Hulk, and they couldn't pierce her skin. And clearly someone wants to get her blood because they talk about a boss. The other story is, I don't know if you've seen that this singer, rapper, I don't know what she is. That's my age for you. She's in the show. Basically, the dickhead from the previous episodes has been catfished, if you like, by a changeling who is an Asgardian elfin princess or something. And she pretended to be this rapper singer. I think Megan Thee Stallion or something. Megan Thee Stallion. I'm not sure. And Jen's firm is working on his case. And the man who gave the gift basket in the previous episode seems to have had a complete personality change. And he's the lawyer representing him. And really it's the whole portion just to ridicule the man. And, you know, it's fair enough he deserves ridiculing because he's a sexist idiot. It goes to trial. The changeling says it's a bad relationship. The judge says it's going to trial. She impersonates a judge, and there's this whole supposedly comedy thing that isn't funny. And it ends really with Jen testifying on the sexist dickhead's behalf, basically calling him a sexist dickhead and that he would actually be truly deluded enough to believe that this famous multi-Grammy award winner would actually want to go out on a date with him. He is that deluded. Don't really have a problem with that. The bloke's is an archetype. I guess the biggest problem I've got with that whole thing is that the likelihood of somebody who behaved like that working in the DA's office. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there are sexist people who would work in positions of power, and I don't doubt that for a second. But someone so overtly sexist, I don't know why he'd be working in a position of authority as a lawyer. I mean, it makes no real sense to me that anyone would hire this man, let alone keep him employed once he'd done and said half the things he'd done. It's a bit of an anachronism, really, but there you go. The bit that made me laugh, I don't know if you've seen the whole twerking crap. I don't care about that. It wasn't funny. It was kind of cringeworthy. Right at the end of it, when Megan Thee Stallion says, "You're more fun than my last lawyer," and She-Hulk says, "I will kill for you." And I just thought that was quite a nice little funny bit. When I say funny, I say mildly amusing. Overall, it was an okay, pretty flat, unfunny episode. Nothing particularly complicated or clever in it. Tatiana Maslany, as always, is watchable. Everyone else is forgettable. The guy who's the other lawyer, who seems to have had a personality change, seems to be friends with her and her legal assistant. Don't know when that happened. That's something we didn't see because he joins them for drinks. A couple of things I forgot to mention. Usually I give the CGI a pass, because at the end of the day it's a TV show. I don't expect movie quality, but for some reasons the CGI in this really was bad. Probably the worst I've seen it in the show. Clearly, as the writers testified themselves, they can't write courtroom dramas because the courtroom scenes don't really make much sense. You have Jen testifying on behalf of one of her firm's clients. I would have thought that was a conflict of interest. There's no objections. I mean, she would have been destroyed on the stand. After the sexist blokes won his case, where he mentions that superpowered people should wear an inhibitor, and Jen's like, "Oh, why didn't I think of that?" So obviously the idea is she's going to get Blonsky to wear an inhibitor. But Bruce made an inhibitor. We know they're inhibitors because we saw them at the end of Civil War. Hasn't she been moaning about being She-Hulk and wanting an inhibitor? This is suddenly now changed. It's just bad writing. There's a lack of consistency with motivations and narrative threads in this. For example, the twerking scene. Wasn't she worrying last episode about how she was going to be perceived in the office? And in this one, she's just twerking openly and her boss sees her and just kind of shrugs. As I say, consistency, it's just not there. Now, the bit I wanted to get onto, and I'll try and make this as concise as possible. There's a bit at the beginning where there's kind of a news report about She-Hulk and how her name or a description of her is hashtagging. And there follows a bunch of tweets and messages which are, I'm guessing, supposed to be funny, ridiculing people who kind of say no more female superheroes. Why are they changing all our superheroes? Why have they given Hulk's mantle to a woman? I'm probably going to spend more time on this than it deserves. At the end of the day, it's just the writers mocking their most vehement detractors. And I'm sure they're high-fiving each other for their cleverness. Unfortunately, this bit makes absolutely no sense in canon in the MCU or in the narrative. I mean, if they really wanted to stick it to their critics, then what they should have done is drop the ideology and just written a damn good show. That's how you prove people wrong. Not by lazy nonsensical digs, but by writing something bloody good. Unfortunately, that's not what we're getting. So I'm going to address this in a bit more detail. Bearing in mind, they keep boasting about the fact that it's purely women involved in the production of this show. They don't understand the irony within the points they make. But what it shows is a fundamental lack of understanding of the arguments and the comments people make. Nobody's saying there shouldn't be a She-Hulk show, apart from your baseline dickheads who don't actually know what they're talking about, who jump on the bandwagon. People who are actually commenting on this know who She-Hulk is, are quite happy with a She-Hulk show. They're not unhappy with female characters. That's not the issue. Because none of this happened when Black Widow was around. In fact, people were thrilled by that. And the same people they are supposedly mocking are people who wanted a Black Widow film. Unfortunately, we got the one we got. They're fully supportive of Wanda Maximoff. And we're looking forward to the Wanda Maximoff series, which again crashed and burned at the end. The point is that the ideology comes before the quality. Nobody in their right minds, when I say this, I'm excusing all the dickheads and the true sexists and misogynists. They're a tiny minority. Nobody doesn't want female-led superhero shows. We do. We were asking for a Black Widow film pretty quickly after she was in The Avengers, because she was fantastic. Every time she's appeared, she's been fantastic. The point is that what we get are pretty much Mary Sue's. Characters whose whole development is based on I'm a woman, whose characterization is literally the same. You look at She-Hulk and you look at Captain Marvel, they're the same character. Snarky, sarcastic, great from the start. Nothing particularly interesting about them. And invariably, legacy characters are denigrated. You know, the whole Captain America's a virgin shit, and the narcissist billionaires and adult orphans shit, and male characters are idiots, arseholes, or evil to lift up the female characters. This was the same in the comics with the all-new Marvel. They replaced a load of older characters with a bunch of new, in inverted commas, diverse characters. And just to let you know, diverse characters have been in comics for decades. We've all been reading them. It's not about female superheroes. It's become that because we know what to expect when we get a female superhero. We don't get well-written characters. And I know it's much mentioned, but I'll mention it. We don't get the Ripleys. We don't get the Sarah Connors. We don't get Mila Jovovich character from the Resident Evil films. We get these hollow, empty shells that are just used as mouthpieces for the ideology and the agendas of the writers. And that's the problem. The vast majority of people who comment on woke, intersectional feminism and stuff, they don't care if we get a female superhero. All power to it. They don't care if we get a diverse, in inverted commas, superhero. They just want them done properly. They just want them represented properly. That's all. They don't want gender swapping because that's lazy representation. It serves no purpose other than for somebody somewhere to pat themselves on the back about how brave they've been. We want the characters who've been established over decades, produced as they have been over decades. Whatever their gender, race, sexuality may be. That's it. And the problem is, the minute you hear certain phrases like the first, that's the key one, the first. Because everyone will remember with Black Panther, the first black superhero, despite him not being the first black superhero, not being the first black superhero for Marvel productions either. It's an immediate red flag. And it means that the film, the narrative and the characters may be compromised and are likely to be compromised. That decisions will be made based on an ideological choice rather than a narrative or character-driven choice. The perfect example was the speech that She-Hulk gave in the first episode. That wasn't She-Hulk, that was something the writers wanted to say. So when people complain about stuff, taking the pond scum out of the equation, that's what they're talking about. The same people this is supposed to be ridiculing have been watching these films with women in for years. The same people he's trying to ridicule are the people who are buying the female-led comics. Who did they think was buying She-Hulk? It was men and boys. Who did they think was buying Wonder Woman for 80 odd years? It was men and boys. You know, this weird idea that they project this idea of misogyny and sexism on people who have been buying diverse product, watching diverse product for decades. While a lot of these people didn't even know what it was until the MCU started. I could go on for a while for that one, and to be honest with you, if you don't get it, you won't get it. Like most things in these conversations, things have kind of become very polarised on both sides of it. I'm not saying on one side, on both sides. You have people who go to an extreme and immediately label everything woke. Then you have the other side who call everybody who criticises anything to do with one of these characters as being an istophobe. Every time. So you have these two extremes. People who label people as istophobes push those people further down the road. Because it's a nonsense argument based on the inability to understand nuance. If I say I don't like this show, doesn't mean I don't like women. Doesn't mean I haven't been reading She-Hulk for decades. It doesn't mean I didn't enjoy the Wonder Woman film, and God knows how many DVDs in my collection are female-led films and TV series. It means I don't like what I'm seeing in this. And it's that simple. But that doesn't seem to matter to people because ideologically the lines have been drawn. As I say, the writers will be high-fiving each other in the writing room whilst not actually understanding the thing that they're mocking. It's fine to mock it. It's reasonable to mock it. It just doesn't really work because it comes from a position of not actually understanding what they're mocking. And the mocking's coming from a bunch of people who don't actually understand what they're writing, don't understand the characters they're writing, really just want to use the characters as mouthpieces for their own ideas and ideologies. It's a sad state of affairs. I love She-Hulk. I was so looking forward to a great show. And as I said before, there are moments in each show that could be good. But we've got a bunch of people doing a court comedy who don't understand legal process or how to write a court drama by their own admission. That's not me saying it, that's them saying it. Clearly not smart enough to get someone on board who knew how to do that, or some sort of consultant. Hey, again, not me saying it, that's them saying it. Anyway, I'll leave that there. That little segment at the end went longer than planned. I might put a warning in front of it just to sort of say, if you don't want to listen to me rant a little bit, flick over. Possibly not the best one to be promoting my Comic-Con. It's a 228-page graphic novel called Marked, and it's available from my website. Please pop along and have a look. I'd appreciate your support. Like, subscribe if you fancy it. And until the next time, thank you very much for listening, and peace out.